I, 33, have been going through one of the worst phases of my life. This past week has been an absolute nightmare and I feel like I'm losing myself and my sanity and I don't know what to do. I have been married to James, 35, for the past 6 years and we've known each other for the better part of a decade. He meant the world to me and I loved him with all my heart. Just for him to betray me, I don't know what to make of things anymore and need some advice on how to tackle this. I met James on a dating app. This was nearly 9 years ago when I was in college and it was one of my friends who actually swiped right on him. Back then I had just come out of a long relationship that ended on a bad note and wasn't exactly looking for another relationship. So, when James messaged me for the first time, I didn't think it would amount to anything serious and replied to him because he was cute and seemed sweet. Before I knew it, he asked me out on a date and I ended up really enjoying his company. He was funny and very charming. We ended up going on more dates but things were very casual. Like I said, I was still healing from my past relationship. James knew about how I felt and didn't pressure me into anything. He became more of my friend and I used to trauma dump on him all the time. He was very patient with me and helped me through a bunch of things that I was dealing with, especially with my family, which I'll get to later. We began meeting almost daily and even though I promised myself that I was going to be single for a while and not jump into another relationship, I found myself falling for him, hard. It was unexpected even for me, but his charm and patience won me over and within a few months I knew I liked him more than friends. I knew that he liked me too but he also knew that I wasn't interested in a relationship, so he never asked me out. About a year into our friendship, we were definitely falling for each other. He made me so happy and loved and I finally felt secure enough to ask him out and we got together officially, much to my parents' annoyance. So, coming to my family, my dad at the time was a businessman and owned shares in many companies including managing the family business which he had inherited from my grandparents. We were pretty wealthy and I must admit, I grew up in a very comfortable way. It wasn't like my parents spoiled me or anything. However, there was never a point in my childhood where I was deprived of anything that I needed. My dad wanted me to marry an educated, rich man who could handle the family business. James had lost both his parents and didn't have anyone except for his younger brother and his grandma. He didn't have a college education and was at the time working as a waiter barely making any money. I didn't mind any of that because I loved James. He was my best friend and treated me better than any man had before. Saying that my father wasn't happy with my relationship would be an understatement. I knew that he wasn't going to approve of James because he had a very specific mindset about what he wanted in a son-in-law and James didn't fit into any of it. When our relationship started getting serious, my dad started openly berating him, saying that he wasn't good enough for me because he was poor and didn't have a job, while I was working and had a well-paying job. He said that James wasn't going to be able to keep up with my lifestyle and that I was going to regret it later. But we stayed together despite his warnings. When James and I got engaged, my father was furious. He said that he couldn't stop me from getting married because I was too stubborn but he practically pleaded with me to make James sign a prenup. I must admit, this wasn't even on my mind, but my father said that many people would do anything for money and a prenup was a safety net. I honestly found it insulting that he thought that what James and I had wasn't true and that he was only in it for the money. This resulted in a huge argument with my dad. It went to the extent where he threatened to cut me out of the will if I didn't get a prenup. I spoke with James and told him that it didn't matter what my dad said, we loved each other and I knew that it was true. James said that he too felt insulted that my dad would even bring this up. When I told him my dad was planning to cut me out of the will and out of his life, he told me that he didn't mind signing a prenup if it meant that my parents and I could be together. At the time, I thought that he was being so selfless. I agreed to get a prenup and it was James who showed me a few ways to get it done. In brief, you can get a prenup which will ensure your assets are protected in case of a divorce, but there are also specific prenuptial agreements that allow you to protect and separate your assets for a specific period before merging them. After the time has elapsed, the prenup is dissolved. This time could range from 8 or 15 years or even longer after marriage. This ensures that your partner is in it for the right reasons. We decided to get a prenup for 8 years after which it would get dissolved and we would share assets. This seemed to put all of us at peace as it was a solution to everything. We got married after nearly 4 years of dating. My dad wasn't very pleased, but he finally had to accept it. James moved into my apartment and for almost a year, I paid for the rent and all the amenities as well as all the bills. I didn't mind doing that because I knew James couldn't afford it and I didn't want to embarrass him by asking for money, especially when I was earning pretty well and could afford to manage things by myself. James continued to be just as amazing as before, always patient and understanding. He still worked at the restaurant and I was the one who ended up paying for all our dates which I also didn't mind. I loved giving him things because I knew that he had had a tough life and didn't have much growing up. After about 2 years of our marriage, I thought that he would get a hold of himself and try getting a better job or at least do a few online courses to get more skills. He on the other hand seemed to have lost interest in bettering himself. At one point, he quit his job in the restaurant. I didn't want to put any pressure on him, but at the same time, it was getting difficult for me to manage things by myself. It wasn't like he helped out with any of the housework. He'd lounge around all day or stay out and not even cook me a meal. I just assumed that he was feeling demotivated, and after discussing with him, we decided to sign him up for an online finance diploma so that he'd get some experience. I also felt like it was time we started trying for a baby. I loved kids and I had always wanted to be a mother. I was an only child, so I wanted more than ever to have a big happy family, and I felt like we were at a good place to get started on it. I also felt that having a baby on the way would help motivate James to work harder. We tried for ages, but I wasn't able to conceive. When we got it checked out, I was informed that I had endometriosis and a blocked fallopian tube, which explained why I had such painful periods all my life. This diagnosis also made conceiving and pregnancy much harder. This was horrible news and I took it very badly. I felt like I was useless because I couldn't do this one thing. I did tons of research, took various pills, put myself on a strict exercise regimen, and basically abused my body to increase the chance of pregnancy, but nothing I did worked. I slowly began to lose hope. We had been trying to conceive for a year now with no results. James supported me through everything. He came with me to all the appointments and was always there for me, even when I was at my worst. He told me that he wanted to be a dad, but he didn't want me to ruin my health just for a baby. Now I felt even worse knowing how badly he wanted a kid. After a while, I began to give up on it. I told myself that I was not going to put my body through this torture, and if I was going to get pregnant, it was going to happen naturally and I was not going to pressure myself. Barely 3 months later, I got the best news of my life. I was pregnant. I couldn't believe it. James was ecstatic and so was my family. This was going to be the first grandbaby for both families. I immediately started preparing for the baby. We bought clothes, a crib, toys, and we even began setting up the nursery. Our happiness was short-lived. When I was around 5 months, I lost the baby. I'm not going to get into the details because it hurts too much to even think about. It was a traumatic time for all of us. It was a baby boy. My grief was indescribable and blamed myself for it. The idea of being a mom, even for a short time, made me so happy, and now it was ripped away from me. I stopped going to work for months and didn't have the guts to look at the unfinished nursery. I guess this was when our relationship started changing. I became cold and distant from James. I could tell that he was also grieving, but at that point, I only felt pity for myself. He tried helping me out as much as I could, but I snapped back at him and acted like an idiot when he was just trying to be supportive. It took me months to get over this and reconcile with James, but ever since we lost the baby, I could tell that things had changed. For the next year, we tried to get pregnant but to no avail, and I almost gave up on the idea of being a mother. This was when James suggested adoption. I had given adoption a lot of thought. Millions of kids needed loving parents and a home, and we could provide that to them. We had more than enough and we wanted nothing more than to be parents. We started our adoption journey and it was a long road. After months, we got matched with a birth mom who was expecting twins. We got in touch with her and she liked us immediately. I couldn't help but get optimistic. We were having twins. Yet again, our happiness was short-lived. Once again, we began prepping. This time even the nursery was ready. We were then told after the babies were born that the birth mom had changed her mind and was planning to keep the babies. This shattered me. I could not take another heartbreak. It took me even longer to get over this, and I felt lost for a very long time. It was as if nothing we did was working, and I began to hate myself for it. I could see a behavior shift in James too. He was now working at an MNC and those diplomas had paid off. He wasn't earning as much as me, but now he was contributing to the house. Our relationship had seen better days. All of these blows with the miscarriage and the adoption took a huge emotional toll on both of us, and we were starting to drift away. It wasn't anything crazy, but I felt like I was closing myself up from him, and instead of talking things through, we just went on with it and let the gap widen. About 1.5 years ago, things started getting better for me. I worked harder than ever and managed to get a promotion. James and I went out to celebrate, and we were just chatting about how everything would be perfect if we had a baby. That's when James brought up the idea of surrogacy. I had considered this option while we were trying, but now that I had been through so much loss, the thought of trying again for a baby was just way too taxing. Surrogacy did sound promising, but I didn't want to get my hopes up just for them to be crushed again. James seemed excited and I didn't want to break his heart. Even though I knew that this might not work, I decided to give this one last chance. Over the next few weeks, we did a bunch of research and decided to go ahead with it. I made it very clear from the beginning that my main priority was my mental health and I couldn't take another disappointment. So James agreed to manage the whole thing. He said that he'd do all the paperwork, interview potential surrogates, everything, so that I didn't get too invested. I was more grateful than ever for him to step up like this. I got in touch with our doctor and they began prepping me for an egg retrieval. They pumped me up with hormones and that affected my mood terribly. After my eggs were retrieved, they were fertilized with James's sperm using IVF, and after a lot of prayers, we found out that we had one viable embryo. Our rainbow baby. Despite this, I tried not to get my hopes up. We also managed to find a suitable surrogate. Her name was Emily. She was 24 and was willing to carry our baby. I didn't get involved when it came to choosing a surrogate. James told me that he would handle everything because I was too emotionally exhausted. I liked Emily from the minute I saw her. James showed me all her paperwork. She didn't smoke or drink, her medical exam was good and the doctor approved her. She told me that she was doing this because her mom was ill and she needed the extra money for her treatment. She was working overtime and staying at a hostel to pay the bills, while her sister looked after her mom. Her story touched my heart and I vowed to help out as much as possible since she was giving me the greatest gift. We moved on to the embryo transfer and after. We'd usually expect a positive pregnancy test after 15 days, but we weren't getting it. My heart dropped and I prayed more than ever. The doctor told us to wait a few more weeks before confirming everything. To everyone's relief, 2 weeks later, Emily did a blood test which confirmed pregnancy. A month later, we did the ultrasound and I saw my baby for the first time. The technician said that the baby looked smaller for its gestational age, but apart from that, everything was fine. I was so relieved that I cried. We paid Emily the first installment which she sent back to her mom. She told me her mother would never use the money if she knew that it was obtained through surrogacy and that's why she was staying at a hostel. I felt terrible for her. I spoke with James and asked if it would be possible to have Emily stay with us for the duration of her pregnancy and he was completely against it. He said that it was better if we didn't get too involved and attached, but after a lot of persuasion, he finally agreed. That way, we could ensure that she ate healthy and didn't have to worry about rent, plus, we'd always be close by in case of an emergency. Emily began staying with us and she became a friend to me. I was so grateful for what she was doing for me that I tried to show my appreciation to her in any way I could. I even gave her money every month for her mom's treatment in addition to her normal fee. I went to all the doctor's appointments and made sure that she was eating healthy and staying fit. I started noticing that Jammed and Emily usually behaved very awkwardly around each other. They barely interacted with each other. I'd sometimes catch them having a conversation quietly but stopped as soon as I entered the room. James stopped being affectionate to me when she was around as well. When I asked him about it, he just said that it felt weird that she was carrying his baby. I understood what he meant because it was a bit awkward for me too, so I let it slide. Before I knew it, 9 months had flown by. The baby was still small for their age but was otherwise fine. Finally, our rainbow baby Jaden, a little boy, was born after nearly 43 weeks of gestation. He was perfect in every way. The first time I got to hold him, I finally felt like everything was worth it just to have him in my arms. I was forever indebted to Emily. We took him back home, and we started settling into parenthood. It was everything I dreamed of. I didn't even mind the sleepless nights. James was working overtime while I looked after the baby. He had gotten a promotion and was very busy on most days. He'd sometimes even get work calls in the middle of the night and come home super late. I began getting annoyed because he was barely spending time with the baby and I wanted them to bond, but he kept making excuses. Around 4 months later, I had to go to work to handle an important client. I hated leaving Jaden, but they had specially requested to meet me just for a few hours. I requested James to be with our son that day because I didn't want him to be with a stranger and he agreed. I finished up with work faster than usual and rushed home to be with Jaden. To my shock, I saw that Jaden was crying in his crib and James was nowhere to be seen. I rushed to our bedroom only to find it locked. I could hear voices coming from inside and banged the door. After what seemed like ages, James opened the door looking flushed and when I searched the room, I found Emily, hiding under my bed. It finally clicked. They were having an affair. Even though I refused to believe what I was seeing, I knew it was true. James tried to explain that it was a mistake and that this had never happened before while all Emily could do was stand there embarrassed. I trusted them the most. I had opened my heart and my house to Emily and treated her like my sister. I had given James everything he wanted, only to be betrayed like this. They had no regard for me but had also ignored Jaden when he was wailing downstairs. I was so disgusted. I grabbed Jaden and went straight to my parents' house and explained everything. As expected, James came, begging for my forgiveness and saying that it was a mistake. I had been cheated on before and this was a deal breaker. The fact that he cheated on me with Emily of all people hurt me more than anything and there was nothing he could say that would make me change my mind. I could not be with him anymore and told him that I wanted a divorce. He cried and protested and fell at my feet pleading with me but my dad called security and kicked him out. A few weeks later, I got in touch with my lawyers and served him the papers. Since we had been married for only 7 years, the prenup still held good and I didn't owe him any money. At that moment I was glad that my dad made me sign the prenup, otherwise, half my assets would have been lost to this cheater. When it came to the custody of Jaden, I decided that 50-50 custody would be best because I wanted him to grow up with a dad. James's entire personality changed after he found out that I was serious about the divorce. All the begging and crying stopped as soon as he saw the papers. One evening, he called me and told me that he wanted to meet me and discuss the details of the divorce. We met up and I was shocked to see that he had Emily with him. He looked very pleased. He handed me a document containing his terms for the divorce and my jaw dropped to see that he wanted full custody of Jaden because he claimed that I wasn't mentally sound to take care of him and that I suffered from frequent bouts of depression and BPD. He requested $15,000 in monthly child support and that the baby would be entitled to all the money I would receive from my dad through his will. I immediately rejected this. There was no way James was going to get full custody of Jaden. He said this was all a part of his master plan. He and Emily had been together for 2 years. He chose her to have the baby so that when he eventually left me after 8 years of marriage, when our prenup expired, he could be with her and our son, and take half my money with him. Unfortunately, I had caught him cheating and the prenup was still valid. Because he claimed that I was mentally unsound. He wanted full custody of Jaden, and since I was richer than him, I owed him that crazy sum in child support. I couldn't believe that he could be so devious. The fact that he had been planning all this for years and I had no idea. It hurt to know that Emily was in on this, especially after everything I did for her. Remember her sick mom? All lies. She was just taking my hard-earned money and spending it on herself and James. They took advantage of my nativity just for money, but there was no way I was going to let them take away my son. I asked James if I meant nothing to him. My heart broke when he said that he initially did love me, but after we lost the baby, he lost interest and was only planning on being with me till the prenup expired. This hit me like a pile of rocks. I told my lawyers everything and they agreed that the child support he was asking for was insane. They said that they would do everything to ensure that I had custody of my child. My lawyers also advised me to get a maternity test. I found this absurd because there was no way that Jaden wasn't mine, but they just wanted to make sure. I did the test even though I found it ridiculous. The results made me collapse. It came back saying that I was not Jaden's biological mother. I didn't see how this was possible because my eggs were used and the implantation was done. I am numb. I don't know what happened, I just feel so defeated. I have got in touch with James and he claims that there has been some mistake. I have sent in another sample just to be sure. My lawyers say this is good because now they can drastically bring down the child support until they get answers. Honestly, I don't want anything, I just want my son. This has to be a big mistake. The results are due any time and I've made James and Emily do tests as well. This has to be an elaborate prank, right? I don't know what to do. What do I do? Update 1. Hi, just got back the tests. It is confirmed that I am not Jaden Bio Monday. James is his bio dad and Emily is his bio mom. I just got the news yesterday and I have a lot to tell you, but I just can't bring myself to write it down because then it just feels too real. My thoughts are all over the place and I feel like crying all the time. I just thought I'd let y'all know since so many of you wanted an update. Hopefully, I'll be able to share the full story when I don't feel like garbage. Update 2. Hello. Firstly, I want to apologize for that previous update. I was all over the place and at the lowest I'd ever been in my life. Many of you wanted an explanation of what exactly happened and I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. Now that it's been a couple of months, I finally feel like I can write things down. So yeah, James came clean about everything. He said that it was always his plan to have a kid with me so that he could get child support. They did do the IVF using our embryo, but apparently, that didn't result in a pregnancy. James knew that I was not going to try for another baby if this failed and this was his only option. Once he and Emily found out that the IVF failed, they tried to have a baby naturally and it worked almost immediately since Emily was pumped up with all the fertility drugs. Remember when I said that we got a negative pregnancy test and later was told that Jaden was small for his gestational age? That's because it was not my embryo. That is also why Jaden was almost 4 weeks overdue. It all made sense now. My lawyers also went through all the paperwork that Emily showed me regarding the surrogacy, the background check, etc. Everything was fake. James got them made so that he could convince me and the doctors that she was a credible candidate. I even showed them all the transactions that I made to Emily for her mother's treatment. They confirmed that Emily's mother was alive and well and that she had spent the money on buying a new car and well as other material things. My lawyers have started making a pretty solid case against them and there is no way that they are going to get custody of Jaden even though he is biologically their son. In other news, Emily has separated from James and claims that she had no idea about his master plan and that had taken advantage of her by promising her that he was going to marry her and give her money. She said she was emotionally manipulated and made to undergo the surrogacy under pressure from James even though she didn't want to. She also claims that he was the one who faked all the documents and told her to lie about her mom to get more. She said that once the IVF failed, she was again manipulated into having a baby with James so that their plan wouldn't fail and they would still get child support after the divorce. She now says that she wants nothing to do with James or Jaden and just wants a peaceful life. I don't know how much of what she is saying is true, but for now, it looks like she is playing the victim card. For all I know, she could be very well telling the truth because James manipulated me too, and I had no idea until very recently. James claims that she was in on it the whole time, but all the evidence points towards him. As for me, it took me a long time to accept that Jaden was not mine. I was also scared that I was going to lose him to his bio parents because of this. Now that Emily doesn't want custody and James might be a felon, his custody directly falls to me. I'm not sure about the legal aspect and we have a divorce hearing next week, so I'll keep you posted. Update 3. Hey guys. Just wanted to clear things up. Surrogacy is legal in my country. We have very specific guidelines and rules which we have to adhere to. That's why it takes ages to get matched with a surrogate and they had to have all the paperwork to back them up. So no, surrogacy itself is not illegal here, but forcing a woman to be a surrogate against their wishes, as well as faking all of these documents is a crime. Emily also claims that he forced her to have the baby even though she didn't want to. Considering all of this, the court sentenced James to 8 years in prison for his crimes. He pleaded innocent to everything and the trial lasted for almost 3 months. He only pleaded guilty after they said that they would reduce his sentence from 12 years to only 8 if he confessed. I never thought that any of this would happen. Never in my wildest dreams. I didn't know that I was married to such a vile, disgusting human, and I feel like he needs to serve more time. Our divorce was finalized a month ago. All of James's plans to get custody backfired on him. He is never going to get custody of Jaden, and since Emily wants nothing to do with him, I get full custody of Jaden. Yes, I am not his biological mother, but my name is on his birth certificate. I was the first one to hold him and to love him. I have loved him since before he was born. It doesn't matter what anyone says, Jaden is my son. He was always my son. When the judge handed over custody to me, I cried with joy. I thought I was going to lose him forever, but I am so grateful to have him. Update 4. Hey. Wow, it's been ages. I thought I'd just pop in to say hi and give a small update. Jaden and I are doing great. He turned 1 a few months back and we had a blast celebrating his birthday. Motherhood had been the best thing. Yes, we got off to a terrible start, but I've promised myself to make sure that the rest of Jaden's childhood is going to be amazing. I'm going to work hard to make sure he is loved. James is in jail and I haven't heard from Emily since everything got finalized. I am trying to make the most of the situation and move on. I know that time heals everything even though it feels so real now. I am so happy I have Jaden and that's all that matters. Life feels surreal, but we have to keep moving forward and hope for better days.